Hey guys, welcome back. So today I have the distinct honor to bring you a .45 caliber Luger. Now, why is that such an honor? Well, originally these handguns were developed, at least in the United States, for the U.S. military trials. Now, there were other .45 Lugers that were manufactured for other countries and other trials, but this one has a certain mystique about it. And part of that mystique is in the fact that the original trials guns, once the trials were complete, they disappeared. So there's a company out there called Lugerman.com that has reproduced the 1907 trials Luger that went up against this handgun for the U.S. military service trials to become the United States military's first self-loading pistol. So what Eugene did, Eugene is the owner of Lugerman.com, is he took the original blueprints, and guys, that's no small feat. Okay, it's not just like people seem to think that if you just get your hands on the blueprints, all of a sudden you can manufacture any item. Blueprints are only part of the equation. You need the tolerances, you need the shop notes from the guys that manufactured the original guns, and a lot of this stuff never makes it back into writing. So even if you had an original gun to work from, it's not a simple matter of just simply reverse engineering a gun and making it work reliably. It's very, very difficult and time consuming. But Lugerman committed himself. Once he got his hands on those blueprints, he worked out those little details. He figured out those shop notes that he didn't have access to, and over time was able to perfectly replicate the 1907 trials Luger that would have been used by the U.S. military during its evaluation period. Now, there are a number of different handguns that were entered into the trials. The Savage is one of them and several others, but this handgun is probably one of the most famous. And if you ask anybody what one of the most expensive handguns ever would be, most of them would say something like a Singer 1911 or one of the original 1907 trials Lugers that were used by the U.S. military. When most people think of a military Luger, they think of a handgun that looks very much like this one. This one is a 1916 built gun. This one would be a World War I era handgun, but of course they were used in both World Wars. And this would be your standard 9mm parabellum military German Luger. They have their occasional problems. They can be a little bit finicky. We don't have the right ammunition for this handgun out here, but that's one thing about the Luger pistol. A lot of people, because of what InRange TV did with their mud test, seem to think that this is the most reliable handgun ever built, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's an okay handgun, but for one that was designed right at the turn of the century and for one of the earliest automatic pistols ever built and designed and produced in mass quantities, it's an outstanding military handgun for the era. So what is it about this gun that's so magnificent, aside from the fact that it's a perfect reproduction of the .45 1907 Luger? Well, it's a 1907 .45 caliber Luger. It's not something you get to shoot every single day. So this handgun was sent to me for a loaner, just for me to play with, shoot, and give my opinions on. This is serial number 4. This is the exact same handgun that Ian at Forgotten Weapons had when he did his video. And so it's same handgun, same everything. And so I wanted to see what this gun was all about. Kind of a funny story. When Eugene from Lugerman contacted me, he just sent me a random email saying, I have a 1907 Luger, would you like to shoot it? And I thought it was kind of a joke email. Like, you have a 1907 Luger? Sure you do. And I have some oceanfront property in Kansas. What I didn't know what he was saying is that he had a replica that he had manufactured and he would like me to take a look at it. At that point, I hadn't seen Ian's video on the gun. So I dug around and realized what he was talking about, saw Ian's video, and I said, absolutely, I'd love to get my hands on that thing and shoot it. So again, this is not my gun. I don't own it. I just have the opportunity and the great pleasure to shoot the handgun. So that's what we did. We took the handgun out, we did some shooting with it, and we compared it to other Lugers. Now, I am a Luger collector. I have quite a few Lugers in my collection. This is a German manufactured American Luger. This is a Luger that was intended for the commercial market. It has a big crest right here on the top, just in front of the ejection port. And it's chambered in .30 Luger, but you'll notice the toggle is slightly different, and it also features a grip safety. Now, unlike the Swiss Luger, it has a more conventional 9mm style military Luger grip. 8-round magazine, and a neat piece of Luger history. The .45 military Luger has a number of distinct differences about it, and we'll just kind of roughly go over some of those distinct differences from a standard, say, 9mm Luger that would be popularly used by World War I and World War II German forces. So first of all, the grip angle is slightly different on this handgun. There's about a 4.5-degree difference between this handgun and a 9mm Luger. And the grip is also thicker, obviously, because it chambers .45 ACP. You'll also notice this little sheet metal grip safety here on the back of the handgun. Now, this wasn't the first Luger to incorporate a grip safety. The Swiss Lugers incorporated grip safeties. Early American Lugers, we'll talk about that here momentarily, incorporated grip safety, so it wasn't something uncommon. But Uncle Sam, for whatever reason, wanted a grip safety because our 1911 that we ultimately adopted over this had a grip safety on it. But the handgun also has a very distinct trigger guard here. It's not perfectly round. It's kind of elongated. You'll notice the trigger isn't like a half circle. It has a distinct profile to it. And you'll notice back here on the frame, instead of having a more smoothed L-shaped cut to how the toggle unlocks, it's more angular. So that and the gun is pretty much a 9mm or .30 caliber Luger upsized to accommodate the .45 ACP cartridge. Now, when I talk about the authenticity and the detail that has been used to create this magnificent handgun, which has a staggering price tag of $6,000, and that's just getting started. You can order it in any multitude of different configurations, different barrel lengths, different calibers, including 10mm. You can order it with stocks. It's a truly custom gun, and it's not something that you're going to call up Lugerman and place an order online or something like that and get your gun next day. This is something that people wait for. He manufactures only so many of these guns every year, and there is a waiting list for the guns. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a frozen body of water. Now, this water accumulates here because this is where we use the backhoe to scoop the dirt up to make our berm for our range. And what's over there is miles of nothing. But we like to do this anyway because the safety sallies just scream bloody murder when we shoot over water. Now we're shooting over frozen water. But let's see if the sights are on. Yep, I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say the sights are pretty much on. I mean, it has your typical Luger sight picture, which is a very shallow V-notch in the rear and a very fine triangular point in the front with serrations. But yeah, the gun is sighted in and shoots quite well. I wish I could keep it. As you guys can see, the .45 ACP has quite a bit more punch to it. The gun jumps around quite a bit. Now, Ian, in his video, I believe he said he fired, a handful of magazines through the gun. We fired this gun quite a bit more. Now the gun, like most Lugers, is temperamental and is very ammo specific. The gun seems to like Remington ammunition. As fate would have it, most of the ammunition that I had on hand was some Winchester White Box 230 grain ball, and this is from our friends over at LAX Ammunition. We do have a discount code down below for 3% off store-wide, and we do not receive any money from the use of that code. But so we started using that ammunition in the gun, and we had the occasional bobble, but the gun runs 98% with just about any ball ammunition that's of good quality that you put into it. Now keep in mind, guys, this handgun is not designed to fire hollow points. This is not a self-defense handgun in the modern sense. So if you're shooting ball rounds, the gun shoots to point of aim. It's comfortable to shoot, but it's a 45 with a rather large grip. And when you shoot it two-handed, as we do in modern times, it's a little bit abrupt, has a very fast toggle action, which is normal for Lugers. They have a very fast toggle, very fast action on the gun, which translates to a little bit more perceived recoil than, say, a 1911. But the gun shoots very good, has a very clean, crisp trigger. The sights are dead on. The gun shoots directly to point of aim, and it is a pleasure to shoot. But if you compare that to the 9mm, the 9mm Luger definitely has less recoil and is more controllable. If you go to the 30 Luger, you go down in perceived recoil yet again. So this thing is a bit of a hand cannon, but it's a lot of fun to shoot and it's not painful to shoot. And again, only the occasional bobble did we have. Now let's take a look at some of the details of the gun. If you take a look across the top here, first of all, you're going to notice a simply beautiful bluing. Now you're going to see some wear on this handgun because this gun has been around quite a bit. Ian had it. Various gun magazines have had it. I've been told it has 9,000 rounds put through it. We've put at least 500-600 rounds through it ourselves. And so you'll see some wear on it, but the blue is superb. Now, if you take a look at the fonts used, even on the side, the scripting and the fonts, the markings, they're all very correct, shall I say, for a gun that would have been made 100 years ago. If you handed me this gun and didn't tell me it was a reproduction minus the Lugerman markings on the receiver, I would swear I was holding an actual 1907 service pistol, all right, or trials handgun. Now, on top of the gun, it's kind of interesting to note that where you would normally see a DWM mark, let me grab my DWM Luger. Here's an original 1916, I believe, DWM Luger. You'll notice the stylized DWM on the toggle. Well, LMI Lugerman Incorporated is stylized on the 45 Luger, so it still gives it that authentic feel. If you look at it next to an original 100-year-old 9mm Luger, which is on top, it's stunning. The level of detail and craftsmanship is just simply unbelievable. I would give an organ to own this number 4 gun. The wood of the grips, how it's fit, how the side plate, I mean, everything on this gun, nothing. Usually when you take a look at a reproduction, you'll say, oh, you know, the serrations are off on the safety lever, or the toggle doesn't look quite right, or the extractor doesn't look quite right. There's nothing on this gun that doesn't look quite right. It looks right. It's just stunning. So let's talk about the magazines even of the gun. I'm gonna drop the magazine out. So here are 2 examples of magazines that are available for the 1907 Luger. You'll notice one has a metal follower, foreplate, and then the other one has a wooden foreplate. And you'll also notice that even though the angle isn't quite so steep, that it's still a steeply angled magazine. The round's set in at an angle so the rims are rubbing against this back edge, and then also you have a very quick toggle action. The Luger has a very fast cycling action, which makes it very difficult to feed reliably, so it requires a very stiff spring. If I try to pull down this, you have a little knurled knob here. If I try to pull this down all the way to the bottom, with all the strength that I have using both thumbs, I can get it maybe halfway without the assistance of a loading tool. Now, if I were to take a 9mm magazine from this DWM, I can easily pull that all the way to the bottom. Okay. Now there are loading tools that are available for these. This is what the loading tool looks like, and this would be a 9mm loading tool. But for me, it's not necessary. But the spring pressure is tremendous in the 9mm and the 30s. It is ridiculously heavy in the 45s. So fortunately, it comes with this loading tool, which makes it much, much easier to pull it all the way down. So you may get all 7 rounds into the magazine. We did find that some magazines worked better than others. We had 4 to work with. I think we had 1 that wouldn't lock open on the last round fired. And for the most part, the magazines worked just fine with the handgun. It's certainly as reliable as any other Luger that I own. Now, let's take a look at what field stripping this gun looks like and take a look inside of it and show you that in reality, field stripping this gun is just like field stripping just about any other Luger on the market. This is a Swiss military Luger. This one's chambered in 30 Luger. This will also have the grip safety on the rear of the pistol. The 30 Luger is a bottleneck cartridge, and this served the Swiss for many years. Let's see if I can get the toggle all the way back here. There we go. All right, here we go. Swiss Luger. What's interesting, guys, is that today it's well below freezing, as you can probably ascertain from our attire, and these guns are running with minimal to no lube on them, and they're just very, very tight. But yet this design lends itself to working readily in this cold climate. Field stripping the 1907, just like field stripping pretty much every other Luger on the planet. Let's go ahead and lock the toggle to the rear on the empty magazine and make sure that the action is empty, which we can clearly see that it is. Over here we have the magazine release. I'm going to go ahead and depress that and pull the magazine out of the gun. Again, we can see that the chamber is empty. I'm going to go ahead and release that toggle. All right, now, generally how I disassemble a Luger is I start pushing the barrel to action rearward. The whole gun recoils rearward until the toggle hits this ramp, which breaks the toggle loose and up so it can cycle. What we want to do is start that process. And so I'm going to pull this slightly to the rear. It's kind of hard because I'm trying to do this so I can show it to the camera. Push it to the rear, swing down the takedown lever, and then this little side plate that covers the trigger bar comes off. Okay? That's your first step in disassembling the Luger. Now, the next thing that I like to do is just simply invert the gun and slide it apart. Now, the reason I invert it is because of this little piece right here. This piece wants to drop down and will engage with the mainspring of the gun. So when you invert it, that allows it to clear and come out without any problems. Now, once you get this lower receiver off, wipe it down, oil it, clean it, whatnot, that's about as far as you need to go in field stripping it. Now, to take the toggle apart, you have a big pin right here by my index finger. It only comes out one way, and that's towards me. So I'm going to go ahead and break the toggle loose. I'm going to push on that pin with my finger, and then I can just use fingernails to pull the pin out, and you'll see the toggle just pop right off. Okay, lay the pin down. Now I can pull the toggle and bolt out of the barreled upper receiver. All right, set this aside. No further disassembly is required. Now I can, and again, guys, this is just an upscaled 9mm and 30 caliber Luger. That's what's so cool about this. It's identical to all my other Lugers in field stripping. Now I can take a pin out right here if I want to. I mean, you could stop right here if you wanted to, but I'm going to show you the rest of it. I'm just going to kind of wiggle this around, and the pin that holds the toggle and the bolt together will drop right out. Here's that little pin. So I keep dropping it. There's that little pin. I'm going to set this little pin aside. And if you look on the side here, you You can see how the toggle's drawing that striker to the rear. All right, so that's its purpose. Separate the two and lay the toggle to its side. Now you can go one step further. You can see your extractor here, which is also a loaded chamber indicator. But here on the rear, you have a flathead surface, which allows you to remove the striker for maintenance. I use a flathead screwdriver. Simply push it in a little bit under spring pressure, rotate, and then just release it. And you have a little plunger that comes out, spring, and then the actual striker. So there you guys go. That's a fully disassembled field stripped Luger, and you'll notice, with the exception of a flathead screwdriver, which isn't technically necessary, it can all be done without the assistance of a tool. For a turn-of-the-century handgun, this is actually pretty incredible. All right, putting it back together, you just simply reverse the process. Take the bolt, put the striker in, spring, plunger, take the flathead and try not to launch everything across the room here. Turn it until it locks. Everything's good. Take the toggle, put it on, push the pin through. Take your upper receiver. The bolt will just naturally find its rails, slide it in, slide the toggle over, and then push everything forward. And then you'll want to line up this little hole right here for the big pin. And there we go. I'm going to take the big pin, stick it through the toggle here. I think I just kind of screwed it up. All right. Once you have that, you can lock the toggle down, what you'll want to do. Now we got this little hanging dingus. We're just simply going to invert it again, leave this hanging out. Take the upper receiver and the lower, and you have slide rails right here by my index fingers. Engage the slide rails. Now I'm going to try to get Jason to get in tight here. You see this little hook I was talking about? It's going to drop down right here where my index finger is. All right. And it's just going to drop down. It'll naturally, automatically grab that spring. I'm going to pull the whole action slightly to the rear, put the side plate back in place, rotate the takedown lever back. I didn't quite get it in there. Rotate the takedown lever back into its place, and the gun is back together. So again, field stripping the 1907 is no different than field stripping something like the Swiss Luger, which also has the grip safety, or a DWM 9mm World War I, World War II Luger, or even the Luger American, which is a 30 caliber Luger. And this one, surprisingly, would be the first handgun that the U.S. military technically looked at before the 1907. Early in the 1900s, they looked at the American Luger, which was manufactured by DWM. And this handgun was tinkered with by the U.S. military. It was sold on the U.S. commercial market, and it has a very distinctive crest right here on the top, which is what makes this the American Luger. It also has another unique feature you will not find on the other Lugers here on the table, and that's the fact that I cannot push the toggle up like I can on the others simply by pushing on them, because it has a toggle lock. This one, you must pull it rearward to break the toggle loose. So this would have been the first handgun the U.S. military looked at. So the Luger has a long, interesting history. And so this 1907 is one of those bucket list guns. If you're a military history buff, if you're a Luger collector, if you're somebody that just has to have the coolest things that are possibly obtainable, this would be a handgun for you to buy. If I had the money to buy this number 4 right now, I would not be sending it back to Lugerman. That's how impressed I am with the gun. Overall, the fit and finish, the gun simply looks as though it was made 100 years ago. If you take a look at all the marks, this is number 4 again, you'll notice all the serial numbers are in the appropriate place, just as they would be on a military Luger. You have the 4 there, you'll have the 4 underneath the barrel here I mean, it's just simply stunning. And the blue is beautiful. Okay, I think I've probably slobbered all over this gun enough. All I can say, guys, is if you have the money and the resources and you're looking for what I would deem to be the perfect replica of a 1907 Trials Luger, definitely go by Lugerman.com and pick one of these guns up and send me an email and make me extremely jealous, because I want one too. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, a great way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. When Eugene from Lugerman sent us this handgun for us to play with, it did not come with a paycheck. That's not how we operate here. We are 100% viewer supported, and I'm sending the gun back, sadly. That means our Patreons keep us up and running. We're politically active, and we also try to bring you as much quality content as we possibly can, and our Patreons make that possible. Another great way to support us here at the Military Arms Channel is to pick up a t-shirt, which can be found at our Forged from Freedom t-shirt store. There's a link down below. Picking up a t-shirt directly supports us here at the channel. We also have hoodies and sweaters available for the colder months, which we're currently in at the moment here. And last but not least, please swing by and check us out at coppercustom.com, which is our online store. Guys, we've been doing this for 10 years. We could not have done it without you. We greatly appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you guys soon. I guess it's like grand larceny or something if I stole this. Maybe just declare bankruptcy and keep it. I don't want to send it back.